Yes, it took me ages, but finally, here we are. Welcome to the Pirate Spaceship. I'm Morgan, and this is the second volume of How Not to Suck at Pathfinder Kingmaker, where I do stupid things so you don't have to. First of all, I wanna start by thanking everyone for the engagement with the previous video, and I hope you're gonna enjoy this second part as well. In this volume, we are gonna go through tips and tricks that are hopefully gonna help you in the first chapter of the game as you establish your barony. If you wanna learn about the game in general, the mechanics and the character creation, then go check out part 1. Otherwise, let's get started. In the last video, we created our character and we went through the tutorial mission, finally arriving at Oleg's trading post, your headquarters for chapter 1. From here, it's time to start exploring. The map is quite big and, well, quite empty at the start, but as you travel, you will discover new roads and new places to explore. For the first chapter, we're mainly gonna be in the Shrike and the outskirts. Some locations will need a perception check to be discovered, and some will only be revealed after specific events. The locations you can explore are marked with a circle or some other fancy marker if they are particularly important. The locations where you have ongoing missions are gonna be marked with exclamation marks, at least most of the times. Also, hovering over a location will give you info about it and ongoing missions if there are any required characters and the last time you were there. Some locations are gonna trigger book events, so you won't be able to enter them physically, and once completed they are gonna tell you that there's nothing interesting left there. You are free to tackle the map and the story as you prefer. And you can always find your tasks and missions in the journal. For chapter 1, you will have mainly 3 things to do: defeat Tartuccio, the Technic League, and the Stag Lord and his minions. As well as some errands, like gathering some plants for the alchemist, that makes it sound like a relatively chill mission, and instead you get to the cave and you are dead at the first spider swarm. Oh, and killing some big boar, because Emiri has a complex. Some missions will have a time limit after which you will fail the objective, with various consequences. For example, you have to complete the Stag Lord task in 90 days, or your barony will start very poorly. That said, even if the game puts a lot of emphasis on passing time, try not to worry about it too much. Considering what you have to do in chapter 1, 90 days is actually a lot of time, and you will have the time to explore everything without running too much. I personally wasted a lot of time at the start, because I tried to target the stupid spider cave as one of the first locations, and that was probably not a great idea because it took me ages. And in general, I went back to Oleg a lot of times to remove a lot of crippling wounds, or just to empty my inventory. I also did a bunch of back and forth between locations, and I still completed the main mission with like 20 days remaining. Also, the Stag Lord mission will not actually end when you defeat the Stag Lord, but when you tell Oleg that you are ready to go to Restov. So you can deal with the Stag Lord and the other main tasks as soon as you can, and leave the exploration of secondary areas for when you are done, so that going back to Oleg for healing and emptying the inventory won't be a waste of time. How much time you have left on the Stag Lord quest when you complete it won't matter as long as you are within the time limit. So go and explore, just make sure you get to Oleg in time. Personally, I think a good order could be: start with whatever you prefer between Thornford and the Ancient Tomb, and do both of them. Then let Tartuccio be for a while, and follow the Stag Lord side of the story. You will encounter and deal with the Technic League, and you will get yourself a bunch of new characters. Then you will have some time to wait before the Stag Lord's fort is revealed, so you can go and deal with Tartuccio and Old Sycamore. After that, go get the Stag Lord, and if you have any time left, you can still go around and explore before going back to Restov. That said, feel free to experiment any other order, even though I would probably take down the Technic League before big objectives like Old Sycamore, so that you will get there with a full party. And yeah, besides that, the Fangberry Cave, also known as the Stupid Spider Cave, is tougher than it sounds, so maybe don't try it as first thing. Talking about filling your party, in chapter 1 you will be able to pick up other 3 characters while you explore. You will find Reg, a half-orc, and Octavia, a half-elf, who grew up together enslaved by a sort of cult, where they learned to fight and use magic. Octavia is always happy and smiling and finding the good in things, while Reg would probably kill everything he finds on his way. And he likes to make dad jokes in the least appropriate moments, if possible about doing things in his tent. Then there's Tristian, a priest of Serenre, goddess of mercy and compassion. He came to the Stolen Lands to free them from evil, yet he greatly overestimates his abilities to fight such evil. But his healing powers are gonna be pretty useful. At this point, you will have enough characters to fill your party, which is very useful for your main objectives and is gonna simplify the fights a lot. You will be able to customize your party every time you leave Oleg's. You can also do it while you're around through the group manager, but that takes up unnecessary time, especially now that you won't have a lot of missions that require specific characters. Also, the members of the Tartuccio team that didn't come with you at the start of the game will come with you if you let them after you complete that objective. but you won't actually be able to talk to them. Jaital is pretty clear about that, or add them to your party until chapter 2. In terms of leveling characters up, the first couple of levels are gonna be the most difficult ones. In general, your characters will miss a lot, you are not gonna have powerful spells and weapons, and the enemies are gonna be relatively tough. Especially if your character is not a tank, prepare to be disadvantaged until you reach level 3. As a starting party, I got Amiri, Valerie, and Lindsay, and we set off to fight the Patriarchy. I mean, the Stag Lord. Lindsay and my rogue were essentially useless in battle until we got to level 3, and I expect a similar experience for characters that are not based directly on strength. They were very useful for perception to disarm traps and trickery to find loot, but in battle they would do a minimal amount of damage, and even their other skills were not that great. So yeah, the first levels can be tough to get through, so don't worry too much if you're having a hard time, it's normal. Personally, I felt that when the characters reached level 3, it got a bit better. Rogues got sneak attack and could deal a lot more damage, wizards and clerics got higher level spells, and the game in general balanced out a bit more. Then I would say it gets worse again for at least another couple of levels, before actually getting better. In chapter 1 I got my characters to level 4 I think. You could probably get more or less, it heavily depends on what you do. Also, read your character's description better than I did. And if you're not sure about something, even if it might be tedious, go back and check. For example, when I had to choose the first weapon for the weapon finesse trait of my rogue, the latter had the dexterity modifier to the attack instead of the strength one, I thought, well, I'm playing an elf, so an elven curved blade sounds pretty cool. Except an elven curved blade is a two-handed weapon, my character is a rogue that fights with light weapons, and can't even handle an elven curved blade. So yeah, please read those descriptions. Now let's talk a bit about characters on the battlefield. Amiri, who is a chaotic neutral barbarian, is gonna be your MVP in chapter 1. There are not many ways to put it, the damage she can deal in a turn compared to the others is mental. She can travel a long distance, she rarely misses, and with rage she becomes even more powerful. Leveling up you can select rage powers for her, that increase her stats in specific ways, or give her bonuses when raging. She's also one of the characters with the highest HPs, so the most resistant, and she is the best character for one-shooting things like zombies. This also means when you have to prioritize a character to protect, or assign spells to increase stats, target Amiri. You don't know what to do during your cleric's turn? Give a +2 armor class to Amiri. Don't want to just fire acid for 2 damage with Octavia? Make Amiri giant or invisible. Do switch out her big ass sword at the start, cause she will take way too much penalty from it. A longsword will do at the start, and you will soon find better armor than the one she starts with. She can't cast or use magic devices, so keep in her equipment some acid flasks and alchemist fire to spice it up a little in case of emergency. Also in chapter 1 you will have your first companion quest that is gonna be for Amiri. She is gonna ask you to kill a big boar to prove her strength. This is a good example of a quest that you can leave towards the end, either before or after the final objective for the Stag Lord. Companion quests are a cute way of learning a bit more about your characters, and they're not particularly difficult in general, but you're gonna see a bunch more of them from chapter 2 onwards. Valerie is a lawful neutral fighter, and she's sort of like Amiri but more chill. She is more imprinted on defense. She's a tower shield specialist after all, so she likes having a huge shield. But as a consequence, she does not deal as much damage and actually misses quite often in the first levels. Also, she can travel a lot less, but she can cast Bless, which improves the stat of the whole squad against things like fear effects, so it can be quite useful. She also has a pretty decent amount of HP, so she's useful even just to distract enemies and take damage for the rest of the party for a while. Same as for Amiri, keep her stocked with acid and fire bombs, and switch out her starting shield to make her hit a bit more often. Lindsay is a chaotic good bard, so she mainly uses spells. You can customize her spells going forward with levels, but she starts with some healing ones which are gonna be very useful for your first fights. Some conjuration spells to summon allied doggos that will fight on your side, and some stat boosts for the team like Inspire Courage. She's tiny, so her movement speed is relatively low, but as a ranged character she works pretty well. Octavia is chaotic good as well, and she's a multi-class character which makes her a bit tricky. She is a wizard and a rogue, and how you will level her up will depend mainly on your character and playstyle. For example, since I'm playing a rogue, I favor the wizard side first to have more variation in the party. Since she has a rogue side, she gains sneak attacks, and she can gain a nice variety of damage dealing spells, covering almost all the elements in the game, so she's gonna be ready for almost any occasion. She can be pretty useful in combination combination with other characters too, to make them invisible or bigger. So she's a pretty good ranged and support character. Regongar is a chaotic evil magus, so he can fight and use magic to improve his fighting. The main difference with a wizard or a cleric in terms of spells is that instead of a specific number of spell slots that you can fill with the spells you want, you have a number of points that you can spend across all of your spells divided by spell level. Reg is very cool in fights, and he has a shocking grasp ability which will be incredibly useful to take down difficult enemies in the first chapter. Also, he can conceal himself with illusion spells like mirror image or displacement that allow him to stay close to the enemy without taking too much damage. And not gonna lie, I love his inappropriate dad jokes, and the fact that you can jump in with even worse jokes when he makes them. Tristian is a neutral good cleric, and this thing is definitely healing and supporting the team rather than fighting, and he's pretty good at it. He has a channel positive energy ability that lets him heal the whole team at once, and with the right equipment and feats he can cast it quite often. He also has a lot of spells to help his team with stats that make up for the fact that he's kinda lame at dealing damage for the first levels. But then you can sort of craft him into a battle cleric. You can give him a lot of summoning spells to fill the battlefields with dogs, wolves, lizards, skeletons, whatever you prefer, which are great to distract tougher or numerous enemies. And he can learn a good number of fire spells like Fireball, which really make him into a Powerwolf song. Harim is a cleric too, but is a bit more battle-oriented. He's chaotic neutral, as he's just waiting for the destruction of everything, which also means his spells are more destruction-oriented than Tristian's. And he has a lot of spells to cause as well as to heal diseases, curses, and similar. He's also better at fighting and has a higher constitution, and can handle a lot of weapons. Finally, Jaital is a neutral evil inquisitor, who is basically a cleric, but more badass. In battle, she can prove pretty useful with some of her spells. And she's actually more similar to Regongar than Tristian or Harim, as she has a pool of points for her spells and has a series of swift spells to improve her fighting stats. However, it's also slightly a pain because being undead, she does not heal like everyone else. See all those inflict wounds spells that she has? Well, those are not for hitting enemies, they are for healing her. Back to our tips. Explore your character's abilities. You might find hidden things in the action bar. Under usable items or belt, you can find the items you equipped, such as wands, scrolls, and potions. Under spellbook, you can find all the spells available to your characters. And finally, under abilities, you can find all the extra abilities given by class, race, equipment, and weapons. There are some abilities that almost every character can use, like Charge, that allows you to take 2 move actions and attack in the same turn if you have a clear path to the opponent, Fighting Defensively, that lets you reduce your attack stats to increase your defenses, and Treat Affliction, that can remove poison and diseases. Besides these, each character is gonna have specific abilities. For example, my rogue has acrobatics, that lets her avoid attack of opportunities in exchange for reduced move speed, and demoralized, that can make her opponents shaken during a fight. There are a lot of skills that could be hiding here, so make sure you check out these menus. Well, I'm halfway through what I wanted to tell you in this volume, but this video is turning out to be quite long already, so I will have to leave it here for today. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, leaving us a like, or checking out our other videos. Also, I'm curious, so let me know in the comments which race and class you're playing. A goodbye from the pirate spaceship, and till the next one, fare thee well.